question is, what is gross domestic product, GDP? This is a very, very important economic factor. Very important, extremely important. We'll talk about countries, we'll talk about economies, we'll talk about countries standing on the global level, on the global stage economically. We'll talk about a country's economic power and prowess. We look at GDP. GDP is an indicator of how a country is performing. It's an indicator of the strength of a country. GDP is an indicator of a country's strength economically, how the country is doing, and its productivity, and the working ethics, essentially, of the citizens of that country, and the focus and the emphasis and priorities that they have when we talk about economic factors. Now, GDP is a monetary process, right? So if you look at it from the definition standpoint, it's a monetary process. Now, monetary, of course, has to do with money, right? Because products eventually, this is products, products eventually, right, translate to money. This is money, translate to money, products, right? So monetary process or measure of the market value, right, of all final goods and services. Why is it final? Because when they finish the products, it's final. When they export the products, it's final. When the products get on the market, it's final, right? That's what we mean by final. So it's a monetary process or measure of the market value of all final goods and services produced in a specific time. So this is time bound, right? So in a specific time, usually 1 year, right? Usually 1 year, in a specific time, by a country or countries, right? By a given country or countries. GDP is most often used by government of a single country to measure its economic health. This is very important, and this is what this GDP is all about. The measurement of the economic productivity, here they say health, economic productivity of a country. How is the country doing economically? That is the question, and GDP answers that question, right? When we look at the GDP rate of the country, you get a good sense of how the country is doing, and you can actually compare that country to other countries. And you are able to have a sense of where that country stands. Let's take this again, because this is very critical. And this really captures the essence of GDP. It's a monetary process or measure of the market value of all final goods and services produced in a specific time. So 1 year, for example, right? Specific time by a country, right? So by X country, right? By S country. GDP is most often used by the government of a country to measure its economic health. Please take note of this as we move forward and take a look at the formula, right? So the formula then is C plus I plus G plus the net export, right? This is export, this is import. X for export, M for import. So we want to find out the export, all right, the amount of export, and then use the amount of import, right? And then subtract import from the export, you have the net export. So let's take a look at how the formula is explained. So here we have private consumption. Here is talking about citizens, right? The economic activities and economic involvement in investments of the citizens, right? So that is private consumption. Then here we look at business investments as well, right? So the I stands for business investments. The C stands for private consumption, right? So business investments. So the businesses in that country within a specific time, what is their investments, right? What is the investment? What is the amount? What is the quantity of the investment? We want to understand that. We also want to understand the government spending, right? So G is for government. The government spending, right? So how much is government spending? How much is government spending? We want to understand that. And then we also want to understand the exports of that country, right, and the imports of that country. And here we want to subtract, right, the import from the export. Actually, this is, let's take this again, this is import. So the import minus the exports, right, so the import minus export gives us the net export. So we want to understand how much it is exporting. But before we understand that, we also have to understand the import. the quantity of import. We use the quantity of import and we minus that from the quantity of export, and we have a net export. So for example, if the export, right, the export is say, let's say 100 million, right, export $100 million, and import, right, this is import equals to say $40 million, right? So now we have 100 million minus 40 million equals to 60 million. So 60 million is the net export. We want to understand those numbers as well. So this is GDP. This is how GDP is calculated. And this is the importance of GDP to make us understand the economic health of a country, how a country is performing, and how we can place that country against other countries, and how we can measure that country when it comes to its economic products, the activities of the citizens, the productivity of the citizens, and how they are consuming their own products, and how they are exporting their products to others, and how they are ensuring that they have economic vitality. This is GDP, gross domestic product.